Well, I think he did, and I think reality came crashing down. But what was really interesting about his speech outside Number 10 was that he was clearly still unhappy about the fact that he was being forced to leave. In fact, he made some really important comments there about the herd mentality of the Conservative Party, which will have done him no favors now as a growing caucus of people call for him to be removed within days, but certainly not for months.
Yes, and to that point, he said he was trying to convince his colleagues that he should stay in the position to fulfil that mandate that he kept referring to, which was the election result, to fulfil his agenda. Is there some concern that he still, in some ways, wants to influence British policy?
Well, I mean, Boris Johnson has form here. When he was Foreign Secretary, it took a lot of time and a lot of effort to get him out of the Foreign Secretary's residence when he'd been sacked. So I am slightly worried about the barricading of Number 10. The bigger question here is that Boris is still under the illusion that he has magic to cast upon the British population. Whereas what's happened in the last few days is a greater range of people, even those close to him, have told him that he is now, unfortunately, what would be seen in politics as a toxic brand. He is no longer the funny, buffoonery booster, joyous jester that he was, spreading puppyish optimism across the country. People just don't trust him and don't like him. And the great concern for the Conservative Party is that that was eroding their core brand and support for the future.
Yet he still seemed to believe that somehow he had the support of the British people and that he had some chance, even talking about the fact that they weren't doing as badly in the polls as they thought.
Well, I mean, if you look at his popularity ratings, they are absolutely dismal, minus 70% in some polls. What is interesting, though, and the flip side here is that Boris has always had this ability to connect with the public. Because he was the UK's first real celebrity politician, he did stupid things, he rugby tackled children, he fell into rivers, he hung from zip lines and got stuck. I mean, he made politics, if not interesting, then at least it was always funny, and he was always the centre of attention. And that really did, for a while, attract some public support. The flip side, actually, that nobody's really talking about is beyond Boris, because the key point that is true is that the Labour Party, after having Boris as really an open goal for a long, long time, are not as far ahead in the polls as you would have expected mid-term.
Matthew, let's talk about, too, the damage to people around Boris Johnson. You know, the Chancellor, the Health Minister, who only yesterday finally decided that they would no longer support him. Why did they not see through the emperor with no clothes sooner? And then what does that mean for a possible replacement for Boris?
What's interesting, actually, is that the key factor is that Boris Johnson was never part of the herd. He was never really liked or trusted by the parliamentary party. They tolerated him because they knew he could secure them office in 2019. So his relationship with the backbenchers and with his cabinet ministers was always slightly tenuous. Now, of course, many people who wanted to build their careers were willing to stick with him as long as they could. But for the last couple of years, some what I would call serious, experienced politicians have refused to engage with Boris or join his cabinet. And what you've had happen over the last few weeks, and particularly the last couple of days, is people fleeing the ship. The big question really is, as you say, to what extent are some people now too connected with the Boris period, and also those who were really sycophantic members of the cabinet that really failed to tell Boris what he needed to be heard instead of telling Boris what he always wanted to be heard.
Yeah, which is that likeness that that we heard from earlier, that sort of likeness to Donald Trump, that sort of belief in the impossible or the agenda that he wanted to put forward. Tell me, though, you talk about the fact that the Labour Party hasn't capitalised on the incredible scandals that the Conservative Party have endured. Can they regroup with the right appointment or replacement Do you see them being able to pick up the pieces and actually, you know, face the electorate with some possibility of re-election?
I do, although from a very raw political perspective, they might arguably have been said to have pushed Boris too soon. It was great for the Labour Party to have Boris Johnson in office, ebbing support for the Conservative Party, and the longer they could have almost have held him in office before the general election, the better. The risk that the Labour Party now face is that the Conservative Party do have time to get in a new leader who can build confidence, build support. And as you say, the million-dollar question for the Labour Party is, can Keir Starmer connect with the public? The recent opinion polls show that the public is really confused about what the Labour Party now stands for. Keir Starmer is seen as too slippery on some very basic issues. The Labour Party really doesn't like anyone mentioning Tony Blair and New Labour, but I can remember 1997 where Tony Blair had a very simple pledge card, and it had, you know, vote for us, we will do 1, 2, 3 things. And the offer was simple. At the moment, the Labour Party's offer is pretty hard to tie down with any precision. And until that's sorted, they won't be seen as a government in waiting.
Matthew, always good to get your perspective, and another extraordinary day in British politics. We'll watch with interest and no doubt talk soon. Thank you.
Thank you.